Hey everyone, this is the Mind of Lilith, and thank you for joining me for today's discussion about Season 1, Episodes 3 to 4 of the Braxton Family Reality Show. Last week I had an important situation come up at the last minute, and I did not have time to post to my channel, but we're here now, so I'm going to do a brief recap about last week's episode and tie that into this week's episode. So last week, the family grief counseling session closed out and the Braxton sisters went to their respective corners, with Tamar spending some time with her mother for their cooking show. Tony was rehearsing for her residency show with Cedric the Entertainer, and Tawanda and Trina were planning a trip to Baltimore to figure out what's going on with their nephew, Kevin Jr. Trina went to see Dr. Spirit to discuss her own challenges with releasing the haunting memories and the images of Traci's death. During the session, she stated that her anxiety and depression actually started after her ex-husband Gabe died, and she really didn't get the chance to truly mourn his death because her husband, Vaughn, felt low-key jealous about her having any sort of sadness about Gabe dying. In his mind, if they were already divorced and he was such a bad husband, then why would she have any lingering feelings or sadness about him or his death? I mean, it wasn't like they spent 16 years together and he didn't help to raise her children. Why should she give a damn that her ex-husband died in his 40s from cancer? Now, I do like Vaughn for Trina. Vaughn seems to be a very stable, self-assured, strong grounding energy for Trina. Trina seems to be a bit loopy, a bit ditzy sometimes, very emotional, very erratic, and Vaughn is the opposite of that. However, Vaughn, like many men, have an out of sight, out of mind policy when it comes to loved ones, which is why I believe Traci made it her business to make her only son, Kevin Jr., the executor for her estate. Which brings me to episode 4. So a couple of years ago, I discussed the phenomenon of hospice care wives, right? And these are usually financially successful women who get married for the first time after middle age to men who are pretty much broken down physically, emotionally, financially, mentally, and spiritually. These men would spend their youth giving their babies money and time and energy to their preferences while ignoring the hardworking, average-looking woman, until he reaches old age, and then he needs a nurse and a purse to protect him from dying alone and broke. Well, sometimes the reverse happens. Sometimes a man with some money remarries after middle age, and the new wife wants to ensure that she and or her children are taken care of at the expense of her husband's older children and even the ex-wife, okay? This is why women like Tisha, Scott, and Wanda will never divorce their husbands, because they don't want the new wife to get the pension and the benefits, and she's out here by herself with nothing, right? So, yeah, sometimes the reverse happens, and I'm just speculating here. I'm not saying this is actually what's going on, but for me, this scenario makes the most sense. If Kevin Sr. were to remarry and have children with a woman in her 40s, like Sunny, right? Or her 30s even, she would expect him to take care of her and their children with whatever monies that he has, including monies from Traci's estate. Kevin Jr. would essentially be asked out because many men do not give a damn about their older children once they start a new life with another woman. They barely care about their younger children if they're not in the household with that child. Corey Holcomb, the comedian who's very ratchet and disrespectful and a dysfunctional human being, he stated that, when a man breaks up with a woman and she makes it hard for him in any other way, he can just make a whole nother family and say F you and the baby. That's what many men do, especially in the Black community. I'm not saying that only Black men do this. No, I think this is a male thing, out of sight, out of mind. I'm going to give my time, energy, and attention to whoever is making me feel good at the moment. Strippers, side pieces, whatever the case may be. So I kind of sort of believe that Traci may have made her son the executor to the estate to ensure that he won't be asked out if Kevin Sr. decides to get remarried. I'm not saying that Kevin Sr. was a bad father. And to be honest, I don't like the way that the Braxton sisters treat him as if he's some outsider when he was married to Traci for 30 years. No, he wasn't perfect, but to be honest, most marriages are raggedy, which is why all of the Braxtons are divorced except their brother Michael, it seems. So apparently, Kevin Sr. is mad that Kevin Jr. is the executor to his mother's estate, which I absolutely believe was more of an act of love for her son than it was an act of spite against her husband. Traci, like many other women, knows that when a man is done with a woman, a baby mother, ex-wife, or whatever, in many cases, he's done with the children too, especially if they're grown. A man's empathies rarely extend beyond the person who's making their penis hard, which is why Vaughn could not understand how Trina could still love a man that she was no longer in love with. Just because we're not together doesn't mean I don't care about you anymore as a human being. And many men don't understand this. So what if Kevin Sr. remarried in 10 years, right? Kevin Jr. at this point would be in his 30s, late 20s. And the new wife would expect Kevin Sr. to take care of her and her kids more than his own flesh and blood. This has happened so many times. Do not come in my comment section acting as if women are perfect princesses who care about everybody's children just as much as their own. No, there are many women who are very selfish. And they will say, even though this is your child, we're together now. F them. It's all about us and my kids. Even if they're not your biological children, it don't matter. You're here with me. You're living in my house. I'm having sex with you. I'm taking care of you, so on and so forth. And I'm not saying that all women are like this, but many, many women are like this. Many women who come along second and third wives, they feel competitive against the first wife, and many of them do not care about the well-being of the older children. They do not care. And I'm not saying that Kevin Sr. was going to meet someone like this. That's not what I'm saying. But to me, this makes sense. It would make sense that Traci would put things in place to ensure that if Kevin Sr. does get married, or remarried, that the new woman would not try to use Traci's resources or her estate to take care of her and their children more than her own flesh and blood. She wasn't having that, and it is what it is. So if Kevin got remarried, more than likely the new wife would expect him to take care of her and her kids more than his own flesh and blood. And if Kevin Sr. is the typical man, he'd more than likely do that, right? He justified it by saying that little Kevin is a grown man now. It's time for him to make his own way in life while using his mother's estate to take care of another woman. Again, I'm not trying to make Kevin Sr. into the boogeyman, but a lot of men have no problem taking care of another woman and her children more than his own flesh and blood. This is not uncommon in America, especially in Black America. And the fact that Traci did not trust her husband of 30 years to be the executor of her estate is an indictment against our culture and the men who are supposed to be the patriarchs and leaders of our community. These men will have their own flesh and blood languishing in struggle and poverty while they take care of their new wife, girlfriend, and her children, who may or may not be his own flesh and blood. We saw this happen with Brian McKnight. We even saw this situation happening with the guy from Boyz II Men. I forgot his name, Wanye. He just did this. He just left his family, I guess, to be with a preference, and now he's starting over with her. So it is not a rare thing for a man of any race to pretty much disown his own flesh and blood because he doesn't have sexual access to the mother anymore. Again, this is not 100% the case. It doesn't happen all of the time, but it happens a majority of the time, in my opinion, okay? With that said, I do think that Kevin Sr. deserves a little more respect from the family because he was there for Traci when her sisters were not. When Traci was pretty much excommunicated from the sisters because of her pregnancy, Kevin was there for her comfort and support. And it seems like they still treat him as if they have resentment towards him for their girl group not popping off back in the 90s. You know, I'm going to be honest. I've seen the Braxton trio on social media and YouTube videos. They were not going to cut it against En Vogue, SWV, TLC. They didn't have that ick factor, even though they can sing and harmonize. But LaFace chose Tony for good reason. And, you know, I did not like the fact that Kevin Jr. said that he was born into the family while his father married into it like they're the damn Jacksons. And then Tawanda was egging him on and creating more division between him and his father. Like, I'm glad Tony, being the Libra that she is, she wants to give Kevin Sr. a chance to tell his side of the story because his feelings do matter regardless of what they say. Kevin Sr. is little Kevin's closest blood relative. He has no siblings. And then if Kevin Sr. gets remarried and totally ignores his first son, they'll be looking stupid and vilifying him even more. Right now, little Kevin needs his father's love and support more than his aunt's. And it is truly a blessing that Michael Sr., his grandfather, is still alive. But he's not supposed to replace Kevin Sr. He's supposed to help broker the relationship since he understands what it's like to be ostracized from the Braxton clan after divorce. Michael Sr. needs to get on his job and fix that mess between his son-in-law and his grandson. The other sisters, besides Tony, seems to not give a damn about their relationship, just like their mother, Evelyn, did not give a damn about her daughter's relationship with their father after the divorce. I'm not saying that Kevin Sr. is perfect, but that is still little Kevin's father. Y'all remember when Tawanda's veins were popping out of her neck when she was defending her ex-husband after Tamar called him a broke babysitter? She wanted him to be given some respect as a good father, but she ended up divorcing him anyway. Well, Traci stayed married to her husband, and I think Kevin Sr. deserves the same respect that Tawanda was demanding for her ex-husband. So while Traci was alive, she defended her husband, and Traci was far from a pushover. She was probably the most strongest and independent person in the family. I don't think Kevin Sr. was punking her into staying married. And it looks like the family does not give a damn about Kevin Sr. at all. Maybe he had a messy side piece situation. Traci admitted to her own indiscretions in the marriage as well, but that does not mean he deserves to be ostracized from the family and from his own son's life. Now, it could be that Kevin Sr. is pushing the family away. He could feel that they've driven a wedge between him and his son. That's also definitely a possibility considering how tribal Evelyn made the clan. But if they care about little Kevin as much as they say they do, they need to help him mend that situation with his father and not egg on the dysfunction like Tawanda was doing. So Kevin Sr. has the right to feel some kind of way about Traci making her son the executor, but at the same time, he has to see it from the mother's perspective. Traci left her son alone in the world in a sense before he was able to find his legs in the world. He's still developing an identity for himself. And she wanted to make sure she took care of him even after his death because she did not want to leave her son, right? I think making her son the executor gave her some peace with dying so early in a sense. It was like she was still mothering him and taking care of him from the grave. And, you know, he's an only child. So if his father decides to start over with another woman, which he can do, he's in his 50s, right? Where would that leave Kevin Jr.? Little Kevin is also going through marital issues. If I was the father, I'd feel hurt or betrayed about how Traci handled things. But at the same time, I would feel some relief knowing that my only child was being taken care of, no matter what happens to me too. Because suppose something happens to Kevin Sr., God forbid, and Kevin Sr. is dating some shiesty girlfriend who is changing paperwork because she's living in his house. This situation kind of happened with, what's her name? Lisa Ray. Lisa Ray's father was like a kind of sort of a pimp, and he had multiple girlfriends, and it seems like he was killed by one of his girlfriends, and she doctored the paperwork to basically leave Lisa Ray with nothing. She took all of the assets and put it in her name. Something was going on with that, where one of the girlfriends pretty much put a lot of property in her name, and I think when he questioned what was going on, he was killed for that. I think that's the story. I don't know. But there are a lot of shiesty women out here, including Venus and Serena Williams' father's girlfriend, who had a baby by him when he was in his damn 70s and she was in her 30s, right? There are a lot of women who do this. This is not uncommon. So Traci did what a good mother does. Looked after her only child, which means that she was also looking after her grandchildren. So yes, Kevin Sr. has the right to feel some kind of way, but he needs to get out of his ego and be like, well, at least it's going to my son. At least my son is going to be okay, right? So yeah, I think Tawanda was doing way too much, talking about how she wasn't going to give Kevin a senior a voice on their platform. She needs to relax and stop acting like that man wasn't a better father to his son than her ex-husband has been to her children, right? They need to stop blaming him for the girl group thing failing and stop instigating mess between him and his son. That's irresponsible. Yes, it is Kevin Sr.'s fault that he and his son had a falling out. I'm not blaming anyone but him for that. But these two do not need the peanut gallery of the Braxton sisters adding fuel to the flames. The most important thing right now is Kevin's relationship with his father, and everything else will fall into place. If Kevin Sr. wants to continue to be a bitter asshole because he can't use Traci's estate to take care of another woman, then that's on him. Because to be honest, I think it boils down to that. Kevin Sr. feeling like his son is in control of his money and his life, and thus his ability to move on with another woman. It's a blow to the ego. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be. He's a human being. But it's not enough of a blow to want to sever your relationship with your only son, no matter how grown he is. So now on to Tamar. Tamar was discussing her own healing journey, and she said she only came back to the show because her sisters and her mother asked her to, which I low-key don't believe at all, because now she has a book coming out and she's putting out a new album. She's using the platform to promote her own projects again, it is what it is. I mean, be honest about it. I don't know why she's acting like she's doing people a favor and she's not, okay? It's giving low-key wannabe diva, okay? I don't understand how Tamar complains the most about the reality show, but out of all the sisters, she benefited the most from the platform, right? I think she didn't like being called out on her shit. She bragged about how perfect her life was when she was married to Vince, only to have that backfire on her face, big time. So a part of me feels like Tamar believes she has to put on for the camera, which does nothing more than to make her look kind of like histrionic. It's like the cameras activate the persona her mother cultivated for her as a Braxton. So now she's split between being herself and performing for the cameras. And, didn't Tamar admit to having some sort of personality disorder? I don't know. Children of abuse and neglect tend to develop these types of issues, so I wouldn't be surprised if she does have that problem. But I do feel like Tamar is going the same route she went before the first iteration of the show. Like, she kind of acted like she was not above it all, but kind of sort of like kind of sort of like above her sisters in a way. I'm not saying that she shouldn't have her own life, but the way she was acting as if I'm doing them a favor, like they had to ask me to come back. I didn't really want to come back to the show. It's like low-key given, without the show, without me, there'd be no show. And now, she can kind of look down on them a little bit. This is kind of the vibe I was getting when she was promoting her album. She wanted to be more on Tony's level, the superstar of the family, right? When you have a parent who's like a stage mother, who grooms her children for the cameras and success, the highest level of ego gratification is being a solo star, like being, independent of your siblings, not being a part of a girl group. So I feel like Tamar also resents having to be a part of the Braxton clan. She stated that she, she feels honored about being a Braxton in a sense. It's her birthright, but she doesn't like everything that comes with it. And she didn't really get into what that was. I think a part of it was the idea of them having to be like an ensemble as a family, as a group, as, a situation. So she doesn't have the space to be her own individual star. But at the same time, without this platform with your sisters, you can't do that anyway. You need the show to kind of put yourself on a pedestal. And so I'm not saying she's trying to look down on her sisters, but that's the attitude is given when she says, well, they had to beg for me to come back. She didn't say that verbatim, but it's kind of sort of, I was the last one to agree to it. I didn't really want to get back into the show again, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't really need this. I'm above it all. That's kind of how she was acting, when she got her own reality show with Vince, and then she put out her album, which was really successful. It started to show some of the cracks in the family, as well as if they were being abandoned again, like by Tony. So I kind of sort of feel like Tamar thinks she's Tony 2.0. If you notice, Tony went her own way, and then Tamar went her own way, and then the two sisters, Tawana and Trina, they linked up together to deal with Kevin. Tamar went to work on her own projects, and Tony went to work on her own projects. So I honestly feel like Tamar thinks she's too good for the show. That's what I kind of feel like. When she said that, oh, well, I didn't really want to come back. I came back because they asked me to. Like she's doing them a favor. But you're benefiting from it too, obviously. So don't act like you're Tony Braxton and you don't need the show. Like, Tony doesn't really need the show. She can do it for extra money. But even after the show, she won a Grammy. She had a couple of good albums that came out afterwards that did pretty good on the charts. And she's considered a legacy act, which is why she has a residency, in Las Vegas. So I didn't like that vibe, but I do commend Tamar for trying to heal and be a better person. But I don't want her to vilify her sisters as a way of saying, I'm not like them. I'm better than that. So in order for me to heal and be a better person, I can't associate with these type of people because they're toxic. They're the problem, right? They're the ones who whatever. Now, I will say this, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, their family dynamic could have conditioned them into being toxic towards each other in that way. There could be a lot of emotional and mental enmeshment, which kind of perpetuates negative attitudes and behaviors among the family members. I understand that part, but don't throw your siblings under the bus as if they're the only bad guys in the situation. And in order for you to be a better person, you can't be around them because they're the reason why you get triggered and act up. That's not the case because you were the one talking shit about your siblings and their marriages in seasons 1 and 2 before you got your own show. You were the one who was kind of like the troublemaker. You gave your siblings your ass to kiss in many ways. Don't act like now they're the reason why you need to go on a healing journey. No, you got your own issues. Yes, the dynamic may trigger that reaction and response. But if you're truly healed, and to Tamar's credit, she didn't say that she was fully healed. But when you're truly healed, nobody else can trigger you into being something or saying something or doing things that you don't want to do, right? So don't try to other your sisters and make them into the boogeyman in order to put yourself on the pedestal of being this whole healed paragon of sagacity. That's not the reality of it. Again, I commend her for doing this. It is what it is. But I like many things in our society, I feel like healing journey is now a buzzword, just like demure is a buzzword. Why is demure a buzzword? People didn't know what the word demure meant before TikTok. So it's like everything becomes a buzzword and like a catchphrase for some inauthentic movement. It proves how lackluster our culture is. We don't have a culture anymore in America. The culture is consumerism and capitalism, right? The kind of car you have, the neighborhood you live in, the clothes you wear, your body type, your phenotype, that's a part of your cultural value. It's no longer about the social contract that your people have made with the world to ensure that they put their best foot forward to preserve the human family, but also to elevate it at the same time, right? We're not about elevating anything. We're just about hyper-consumerism and acting as if or putting on a persona of whatever's hot at the moment. Again, I'm not saying that Tamar's journey isn't authentic. I don't think that she doesn't want to be a good person. But I would caution, based on what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, I would caution her against vilifying her sisters and turning them into the boogeyman in order to exalt herself above them as like some sort of exemplar of a healed person. Because now we can go into the realms of like spiritual narcissism, what these pastors do. And I'm not saying that's what's actually happening here, but human nature and human psychology are very complex. So yeah, I would caution against that. But other than that, again, I'm happy the sisters came back. The energy's a bit different. I hope that I don't know. It's like Traci not being there. There's a gaping hole. Like she has such a presence on the show and you can feel not only her absence, but how her absence is affecting the siblings. So it's even more evident how significant she was to the family, even though they weren't aware of it. Like Tony said, she was the glue that kept them together. So she was the most humble one. She didn't have a big ego to the point where she was going to not have her baby, not get married, and have a simple life. She wanted a simple life. She made sacrifices to maintain that simple life. And she didn't allow her ego get in the way of her responsibilities as a mother and a wife. And so, yeah, I think her humility is what they missed the most because she was I think Trina's humble too, but everybody says Traci was the most real one, right? She was the least affected by fame or celebrity. She still stayed true to who she was, regardless of who was around her. And, and I was happy she got her redemption towards the end of her life where she was able to put out an album. And I think the album was called Last Call, which is quite ironic, but it is what it is. She was able to fulfill her dream in that way. And then she got sick after that. But Traci was like the real one in the family. And that's why they kind of had an issue with her. I think that she went against this persona, this image that the family had cultivated. And that was also part of the resentment they had towards her, especially Tamar. Yeah. So, it is interesting to see how it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out as the season plays out. One more thing. Tawanda's boyfriend is hanging out with Vaughn and Trina, and apparently he was going to ask Tawanda if I guess for her hand in marriage. He went to her father and asked. Now, I guess the show went off the air. Those plans changed. Why is this relevant now? Why? Because the show is back on the air? Like, why couldn't he marry her when they had no show? So, what is this about? Let me not say nothing. Anyway, all right, guys, I'm going to watch the last 3 episodes of Love, Marriage, Huntsville, and I'm going to post my commentary about those episodes later on today on the membership tier. Thank you for listening. I look forward to reading your feedback. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will speak to you soon.